Hey everyone. So today we are diving into an explainer on a really massive shift happening right now in how we build AI applications. And we're going to unpack a pretty critical thesis here. It's the idea that simply slapping an approve button on an AI workflow, yeah, that is not real governance. Honestly, it's mostly just a way to make ourselves feel better, while actually creating this incredibly dangerous false sense of security. Think about it. It's literally the developer equivalent of blindly clicking accept on a 50-page terms of service agreement without reading a single word.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to build out a highly pragmatic framework for fixing human-in-the-loop systems. We'll start with the illusion of governance, move on to the 5 elements of useful approval, talk about setting smart risk thresholds, figure out how to combat alert fatigue, map out a full governance architecture, and finally, we'll wrap up with the ultimate practical test for production.
All right, Section 1, the illusion of governance. We're moving beyond the simple approve button. We often like to think that just putting a human somewhere in the loop magically protects our systems, but blind delegation? That is a total trap.
To really see why that's an illusion, let's look at a concrete, everyday workflow. Imagine your AI agent proposes a customer refund. The human operator gets a prompt popping up on their screen that just says, "Approve refund, yes or no." Now I want you to ask yourself honestly, is this actually a good, reliable control for a production environment?
Now, what's really interesting about this scenario is the sheer amount of critical data that is completely missing. Think about that vague interface the approver gets. Now compare that to everything they absolutely cannot see. The actual refund amount, who the customer even is, the reason the agent decided on a refund, the evidence the AI used, the relevant business policy, whether this action is reversible once clicked, or what happens to downstream systems. Without all of that context, the human operator isn't providing governance. They're just guessing.
Which brings us to Section 2, the 5 elements of useful approval. Because human in the loop only actually works when the human can make an informed decision.
If you're building a production-grade interface, there are 5 essential elements you have to expose to the user. You need to show the exact action, the real-world impact, the evidence, the reversibility, and the owner. Let's break these down real quick, starting with the action.
You have to show exactly what is going to happen. Instead of using a terrible anti-pattern like asking approve operation, which means nothing, your system needs to explicitly state something like approve a $500 refund to customer X. See the difference? That transforms a blind, risky click into a crystal clear objective.
Next up, we have impact and evidence. You must show what actually changes out there in the real world. Are we moving money? Are we altering customer data or shifting permissions downstream? And as for evidence, whatever you do, please do not just dump the AI model's internal chain of thought on the screen. Show real, deterministic facts. Show the business policy that matched, the original order date, the validation results. Give the human the actual hard facts they need to confidently authorize that step.
Then there's reversibility. This is a massive factor in AI design. Think about the physicality constraint, the reality that physical or super high-stakes actions cannot just be rolled back with a quick undo command. Reversible actions in digital environments? Sure, they can usually tolerate more AI autonomy. But if an action is irreversible or really expensive, your system demands much stronger human controls before it commits. And finally, rounding out the 5 elements, you have to define the owner. Who is actually holding the authority for this decision, and what is the recovery path if things go sideways?
Let's move to Section 3, setting smart approval thresholds. Because, let's be real, routing every single tiny decision to a human is just a recipe for system failure and a terrible user experience. You really need a framework based strictly on risk. Picture a simple mapping to guide your architecture. If an AI action has a low consequence and it's easily reversible, just let it run. Rely on automated or bounded execution. If it has a medium consequence, okay, move that to conditional routing or a standard human reviewer. But if you're dealing with an action that has high consequences and is totally irreversible, you absolutely must mandate strong, explicit approval or escalate it directly to a specialized human reviewer. And this brilliantly illustrates how threshold logic works in actual practice. Take an insurance claims workflow, for example. The system doesn't bother a human every single time. Instead, if a claim amount goes above a specific dollar threshold, then it routes to a human. Or if the AI's confidence score drops below, say, 0.85, it escalates to pending human review. A human review shouldn't be a failure state. It's a planned, first-class branch in your control flow based on smart, concrete thresholds.
All right, Section 4, combating alert and approval fatigue.
This is where we get into the psychological and operational risks of poorly designed systems.
The sources identified two major operational vulnerabilities here. First, there's automation bias. This is when humans overtrust the AI's recommendations and completely fail to scrutinize the outputs, especially if the AI sounds super confident. Second, and this is huge, is alert fatigue. If your human operators are constantly bombarded with continuous, low-priority, low-context alerts, they start ignoring critical warnings. They just begin approving mechanically to clear their queue. The human literally becomes a very expensive rubber stamp. The control might exist visually on the screen, but operationally, it completely fails.
So, this is exactly why making the decision smaller and way more specific matters so much to prevent that blind rubber stamping. If you ask someone to approve the entire workflow, human nature says they're going to skim it and just click yes. But if you break it down and you ask them to approve a specific action for a specific customer for a specific amount matched to a specific policy, you force them to focus. You actively force them to evaluate the exact parameters of the risk in front of them.
Moving on to Section 5, the full governance architecture. Remember, the human should never ever be the only thing protecting your system from a total meltdown.
Let's step through what a genuinely robust, defense-in-depth pipeline looks like. It starts with the LLM proposing an action. Immediately, that goes right into automated schema validation. Next, it's checked against your business policy and your risk thresholds. Only then, and literally only if required by those exact thresholds, does it go to human approval. Once it is finally approved, the agent executes the task using very narrowly scoped tools. And lastly, the system state is recorded, and a full audit trail is generated logging the proposal, the evidence, and the specific human who hit approve. So what does this actually look like for the user? Imagine a context-rich terminal interface. This is a fantastic example of shared control. Rather than just asking for a blind delegation, the system stops and asks a highly specific question, say about color matching for a packing list, and it provides clear, nuanced options the user can easily just tab through. The stakes are clear, the choices are highly visible. It only takes a couple of seconds, but it guarantees the system actually understands users' intent before it burns compute time or causes a massive downstream error.
And that brings us to Section 6, the ultimate practical test. Is your workflow actually ready for prod?
So the crucial point is this. Before you ship any approval flow, you have to ask yourself a hard question. Just by looking at the screen, can your human approver confidently answer these 5 things? What exactly is happening? Why is the agent recommending this? What is the real-world consequence? Can this action be undone? And who owns this decision? Look, if your user cannot immediately answer those 5 questions, your approval interface is totally incomplete. And your governance, it's just an illusion.
I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought that really summarizes everything we've unpacked in this explainer today. Human in the loop only works when the human can actually see the loop. So I challenge you to take a hard look at the AI workflows you are building right now. Are you building genuine operational safeguards, or are you just building buttons? Thanks so much for joining me to explore this, and happy building out there.